Finance and Economic Development Committee for January 6, 2022. President, I'm Mark Weber. We have Tim McCarthy, Jonathan Smith, Amber Rathburn is our Finance Director, Steve Bronder, Tax Commissioner, and Kayla Trego is our Deputy Finance Director here, and also off camera is Bridget Cabot. So we have quite an agenda here. We're going to have dinner brought in about an hour. I'll try to get through this before that. Anyhow, approval of prior month's minutes. Any objections? Nope. Anyone? Okay, we'll consider those approved. And the next thing on the agenda is the discussion of food truck fees. This was actually, even the mayor kind of mentioned to me that he'd like to have this discussed this month. So I invited Rick Ruffner here as a representative for himself as a business owner, and possibly he's been talking to other business owners. And would you like to say anything,
Sure.
Rick? I know you're kind of shy. And you don't really...
My name is Rick Ruffner. I own several businesses around the community, very active in the community, I will say. To be honest with you, this all started 7-8 years ago when Mike Olmsted was mayor, when he first brought all the local businesses in to talk about food trucks. Most of us were opposed to food trucks coming back or coming into Perrysburg. That being said, what drives most of the businesses nuts is the fact that you only charge them $100 for the year. If that's the case, why not call the county and tell them to drop my property taxes and just charge me $100? If that's all it costs to do business in this community, the businesses are willing to pay it. But now you found it that for $100, they can come to this town 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, whenever they want, set up in front of my ice cream store and sell their wares. I don't know how, I'm all in favor of fair competition, but I don't know how you think that is fair competition. I think that, there's many ways you could do this. I'm not saying to ban food trucks, because I know they are popular with the citizens, but even the citizens that you talk to, when you tell them they only have to pay $100, they're shocked about it. They didn't realize that, and I think that's because they look for you guys to do their support. They voted you into office, and they look for you to take care of these things. But when you tell the citizens they only have to pay $100, they're pretty much shocked about it. And I think that's the bad thing is, I mean, you go to some of these businesses that are paying rent of $3,000, $4,000 a month. I mean, how is it fair then that they have to pay that and a food truck only has to pay $100? I don't really understand how you think that's fair competition.
Okay, I'll speak first.
Go ahead.
Rick, I don't disagree with you. I really don't. And I'm just looking for a good way to do this, and I think we asked for these comparisons with all the surrounding communities, and we're right up there with the highest of them all. I don't know if their small businesses aren't upset about this, but I do think it's low. But just because they're doing it doesn't mean we have to follow this. I mean, I can see where Perrysburg could be a leader in this rather than just a follower. And when I just found out that food trucks pay nothing extra for the farmer's market, not even as much as what our vendors are being charged for the booths, with or without electricity. Those vendors are, I think they're $250 without electricity and over $300 if they have electricity. So I don't know. I'm in favor of at least looking into raising this at least as much as what our other vendors have to pay for a booth rental on farmers market, because food trucks really are making a killing here. And this is something I wanted to ask the administration, or possibly our tax commissioner, is are we monitoring how many employees these food trucks have, and they're making
Yes,
their wages here, and how are we doing that?
part of the application process for the food truck permit each year requires a letter of good standing from the tax commissioner. So that's not something that I provide to the mayor's office, but it's something that I have to provide to the taxpayer since all of their filings are considered confidential. But I can provide them, and then they can distribute that to whomever they wish. But that's one of the requirements for them to be eligible for a food truck permit, is they have to have their filings up to date. I just received an email from someone that was already interested in their 2022, and we do have some delinquencies on the account, and I did notify them of that, and basically told them I can't issue the letter of good standing until they bring their account up to date.
So they report to you
Both.
honestly, I mean, how, we don't know if it's honestly or not, how many?
As honestly as everybody else.
So we have to assume it's
Yes.
honest.
Yes.
Yeah, we gotta assume that it's honest, that they're, how many employees they have in that truck and how many hours.
And then the other thing is not only do they file a net profit account, but they also, file a net profit return, but we also will set up a withholding account as well. So they, most of them, when they have employees working for them, it's not just a Schedule C filer, that it's a, an individual entity, but if they have employees working for them, we set up the withholding account. Now, some of these are smaller businesses, and so under Ohio Revised Code, they can claim an exemption for some of these withholding requirements. As a non-resident business coming into the city of Perrysburg, so based upon certain criteria set in Ohio Revised Code, they can be exempt from the withholding requirement for the city of Perrysburg. They would still have to withhold wages for whatever their principal place of work would be, but they wouldn't necessarily have to withhold from Perrysburg.
Do you mind if I ask a follow-up question?
Please.
What would trigger, I know that there's certain laws within the tax code that if a person works so many days within a community that they have to pay taxes. What is that right now?
So under Ohio Revised Code, there's a 20-day occasional entrant rule. And so technically, if, let's say it's a Toledo-based business, and they're just going to surrounding communities, their withholding requirement wouldn't be triggered, say, for Perrysburg until they're actually on their 21st day working within the city. So that's one of the exemptions. The other one is what they call a small business exemption, and that's if their gross receipts are less than $500,000. And then they're again exempt. Which,
So they're not
as you know, a
right.
lot of the food truck vendors, they're not making more than $500,000, and so they're claiming exemption under the small business exemption as well. Again, but that's all set by Ohio Revised Code, and that's consistent across the state. It's not something unique to Perrysburg. It's the same thing for Toledo, Sylvania, Bowling Green, Maumee, wherever you go.
Well, I know it doesn't answer your concern. I know you brought up property taxes, but at least they're being charged income tax.
Their employees are.
Their employees, yes.
But, you look at my property tax, I'm paying school tax for police, for roads, for all that. They don't pay for any of that. How is it that you want to charge me for that stuff but not them?
I asked our,
Don't you own your building, Rick?
Yes,
I mean,
they own their truck too.
it's not domiciled in Perrysburg, your business is.
Well, but here's the thing, on a Thursday, we look for that money that we make over the summertime, those Thursday nights, Friday nights, Saturday nights, whenever we have events, that sustains us through the winter. Well, you talk to most of the business, we're down 30% on a Thursday night. So if that continues down that path, how long before you start losing businesses in this town? First COVID hits us, and then food trucks hit us. And we're not asking for you to ban food trucks, what we're asking for is a fair competition.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And it doesn't seem fair to me that they're paying $100 and we're paying X amount in property taxes or rent. Because that's what I hear from like a Fifth Street pub or a Swig's. Look at the exorbitant amount of rent they're paying. And why are they paying that exorbitant amount of rent? Because the landlord then has to pay the property taxes. So it all goes, it's a circle.
Yeah.
If I can ask you.
Go ahead.
What would your concern be if they are a Perrysburg domicile business? Would the concern be as great?
Absolutely.
Okay.
You charge, so you're saying like they had a secondary location?
Let's say that I'm going to just pick a random restaurant in town. Let's go with, tequila. Let's say they start a food truck and they bring it in downtown. They're still paying the property tax. There's a reason behind the question I ask here, so.
I guess my answer, and I know where you're heading, but my answer would be, well, if McDonald's opens a second location in Perrysburg, which they have, you only charge them $100 for the second location?
No, well, $100 for,
I don't-
yeah, a food
No, I'm
truck.
saying though,
Not a second
you're
location.
saying if they have a business in Perrysburg, should they be exempt from paying a food truck fee? Well,
Well,
McDonald's-
not trying to say exempt. I'm just asking, because one of the things that intrigues me on this, I'll share this with the board, is Lakewood, for instance, has a different cost for a business that's located inside the city because there's more tax dollars that are captured from that versus a cost for a business that is located outside the city. And that's something that I would be interested in looking.
I guess I disagree on the fact, once again, I look at that as a secondary location. So if you're gonna go down that path, anyone opening a secondary location, should they only be charged $100 for that second location?
If they're already paying like if O'Dear Diner had a food truck, and we set up a food truck at Country Charm or something, you're already paying your property taxes. I'm thinking you should pay the lower rate if you already have a business here.
I disagree with you. I think that if you're gonna open that food truck up and make it mobile, you should have to pay the same that everybody else is paying. Why not?
Well, I guess one of the other points is we really, property tax wise, the city does have some that are associated with it, but we don't have control over some of the other aspects of our property.
No, actually, commercial, people they don't even have the garbage levy. And,
Well, and that's another great point you're starting to bring up. You guys bought them tables. You guys pick up their garbage. You don't even do that for me, and I'm a business here in town. And you don't do that for me, but you bought them tables and you pick up their garbage.
Was that us or the CVB board?
And where does the CVB get money? Tax dollars.
Right.
Right, that's still, if we didn't give it to the CVB, it'd be going into our coffers. That's our tax.
No, we can only take, there's a limit on what we can take from that.
From the CVB?
Yeah.
No, I'm
Yes,
saying
from the
you
hotel
don't-
tax.
I know, you have a bed tax. Half goes to the CVB, half goes into the city coffers.
Per state code.
Right. So we wouldn't get any more if they didn't spend that money.
We wouldn't get any.
We wouldn't get, yeah.
Under that section of the code, in order for us to collect that specific hotel motel tax, half of it must go to a convention and business. guild.
Okay.
There's changes coming to CVB, so.
But you do pick up their garbage as well.
As we do every business downtown that has a garbage can out front.
But you don't pick up my garbage.
If it's in a city garbage can.
But it's not the city, because I can't put it in a city garbage can. I'm not allowed to. I have to have a dumpster. And I put my garbage in a dumpster, and I pay for that dumpster.
So you're saying that the garbage is the takeaway container that they give the purchaser?
Well, what I'm saying is that you have city employees, and they're putting out cones on Thursday, they're putting out garbage cans on Thursday, they're picking that garbage up on Friday mornings. You know, I mean, you don't do that for me.
You can look for your parade.
But the parade is a different instance, don't you think? I make no money on the parade. That is strictly for this community.
All I'm saying is if we do things for your business, for you,
Not for mine. What do you
as
do
a
for-
promoter of an event.
I think we
So the
should
farmer's
circle
market
back to.
is no-
Okay.
We treat the
Yeah, we'll
farmer's
go-
market just like we treat the parade.
But the.
We just don't wanna get into
Is a
specifics.
money-making event.
That I have no knowledge of.
Well, the CBP makes money on it, they charge those
I
vendors.
don't have knowledge of that, nor do I have knowledge of.
The parade is not a money-making.
Okay,
event.
Rick, the only thing, we're not talking about the parade here, so we can't.
I didn't bring it up.
I know, but we want to get back to, the food truck deal here. So, I just feel that, I think $100 is awful low, but I don't think we can bring it up to the amount that you're paying for property tax either. So, I know that you say, let's just make fair competition, but you have a suggestion other than making them pay exactly what you pay for your
No,
building?
because of the fact that you don't want to enforce that, there's gonna be no way to make it fair competition. Because even if you double that cost, say you go to $200, it's still not fair competition. That's all I'm saying.
What is fair competition?
Well, and ask these folks what their rent is, and divide that out by 30 days. Every time a food truck comes to town, charge them that.
Well, I'm charging any fees in the planning zoning area, in this area as well. the fee has to, in some sense, represent the cost the city incurs to allow or support that use. And I think one thing we're losing sight of, I don't doubt what Rick says certainly about the merchants, but these are awful popular options here. And if you're gonna try and run them out of town by charging some fee that's, I mean, we're already the highest fee in the area, basically. I don't have a problem with increasing it if there's a basis to do that in terms of any costs the city is bearing, or in terms of the cost of the competition. If we're letting them in for half of what other communities, then no, that's not good. But I think if you're gonna talk about increasing them, there might need to be some outreach to the food trucks themselves. Unless we're just determined we don't give a darn whether they're in town or not. And to what Rick's point, I think the people in town would be pretty disappointed if we did something to discourage them from coming here.
As popular as they are, they.
I agree.
I know, we can't ban them, we can't, but we can't run this up so high that we run them out of town either, because they're gonna go find other events on a Thursday night.
I think one of the points that I'm taking from this as well is when we're talking about the cost to the citizens is when you have a food truck that isn't domiciled in the city of Perrysburg and they're not here for more than 20 days, because how many weeks out of the year is the farmer's market?
19 or 20.
22, something like that.
Or if they're making it under the $500,000, they're not really contributing to the tax base at all. And,
Right.
and I know the CBB takes care of some of the cost for the actual farmer's market. There's still going to be some costs associated with the city. I know the $100 fee, if I recall correctly, when it was first looked at to the cost to actually go through the permitting process.
Inspections and whatnot.
And I think it would be
right?
nice to relook at that to see if we are truly capturing that cost. However, I do believe that it may not be a poor thing to look at what it would be for a non-domiciled Perrysburg business to ensure that there are some additional costs captured into what the expense of the city would be. Maybe we have it, I'm just spitballing a number because I would like to look into it a little further, but maybe it's $200 a year for a business that is outside the city of Perrysburg to register, and only $100 for something that is registered. But I would like to look and see what those actual costs would be.
Yes, and if we incur any costs with our service department as well, with trash and barricades, cones, I mean, do you know if that's even something we can put a price on?
Those are put out during their normal workday,
Mm-hmm.
so those,
There's nothing extra involved in,
I can double check with Rob, but we're not, one time we're charging folks for the use of city services, such as police officers and/or service, is if we're doing something outside our normal work hours that causes us to incur overtime by their collective bargaining agreement, we have to pay.
I see.
That's been our standard, with the exception of certain events that certain people put on have been excluded from those costs.
okay. I don't know how to come up with a solution. Do you, I mean,
No, I mean,
other than just saying make it
I
fair,
came to-
do you have any other suggestions that really be a little more viable?
No, because I don't think, first of all, like I said, most of the businesses on a Thursday night are down 30% in this town. Eventually, that cuts into their pocket. I mean, I don't have as many people working on a Thursday night now as I used to because of it. And then, the other side of the coin is then I have to deal with the fact that, they come down and sit on my patio and eat their food there, and then I look like the prick if I tell them they can't do that. But, so I don't do it. But yet, it's, the businesses are taking the brunt of this.
I know, I mean, one thing we do here in this town, we do try to protect our small businesses in any way we can. And if there was a way that, but I don't know if doubling the fee is gonna give any protection to our small
No,
businesses.
it's not gonna do anything.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to come and voice my opinion.
That's why I invited you here. I want to hear it. I want to hear every option. I was hoping even to hear any suggestions you might have, short of charging them the same property tax you get. Because I just don't see how that can work. Do you guys, either one of you think we should
Well,
take any action on this?
I think if Bridget can maybe do a little look in our, is the $100 recouping?
I will certainly
Any
double check that, but I
expenses
believe
were
in terms of the actual permitting process, I believe that'll be covering the cost, but I'll double check.
Well, and also if we're providing any infrastructure support for them, you know, by way of garbage and refuse removal and that sort of thing. On farmer's market night, I think, which is primarily the night they're here, I've seen them, but very rarely, other than farmer's market night. And the CVB's underwriting a lot of that to promote the entire event. But, you know, if we're incurring any additional expenses to support them, I think that's fair grounds to recover. So I'd look at that, and I don't, I don't know if it's worth having the food truck people come in, but the fellow from Rosie's was kind of the leader last time,
Yes,
Barone.
Barone, yes. And is that the same owner that's going to be opening up on Third Street?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Sure, I want to do what it takes to keep our small businesses operating, you know?
It's been a tough couple of years for the small businesses.
Yes, I know.
Whether you want to talk COVID, just anything.
Yeah, well, anything,
You
yeah.
name it, you know, it's been tough.
Hiring employees.
Employees, hell, I had to close early this year because nobody wants to work.
Yeah, employees, and even your food's probably gone up, your deliveries and everything else, get things
It's
to
just
you.
tough. It's tough.
So when you lose 30% on a Thursday night, that's tough.
Well, we're going to meet in March for the CVB again, and I just think we ought to be talking to the CVB about if they're charging vendors booths. I just feel that these food trucks ought to be treated like a vendor.
Well, and that's the CVB's business for their farmer's market.
That's
As long
right,
as
it's
they
the
have-
farmer's
As long as
market.
they have permission to use city right away.
So, I realize that tonight we are just talking about this, what the city's involvement is, and then we'll have to go with after you maybe give us some information on
I'll
that.
check and verify that we are covering our internal costs.
Okay.
One of the questions I'm going to ask real quick as well, because I know Ed made a point of question, what would having the food truck come up right in front of his shop? Is there anything that would restrict that right now?
No,
Is there any other restrictions on where they can set up shop?
the codified ordinances that council passed is pretty clear on where they can and can't be. Essentially, they can be on public property within the right of way as long as they're using that space correctly, such as a parking space. They can't park the wrong way on the street. They can't serve food into a street. They have to serve it onto like a sidewalk or a green space. It's pretty open, and it's different for public property, obviously, than the private property.
Can they go into subdivisions and just set up on any street?
They can park along the street in areas where you are
I
allowed
don't
to
know if I
park.
want to, but
And I have seen them do that.
have they?
But
No.
didn't correct me, Bridget, unless it changed, didn't the city not allow them at the ballparks and the pool?
On public, they can be in the rights of way, but our parking lots are a different matter unless they have special permission to
Right.
do so. Which we have given permission at certain of our parks, such as Woodlands Park, for an event the school is going to have adjacent to their school property.
Because I'm wondering if there's some sort of regulations in any other community that would prohibit them from being within, say, 100 feet of another restaurant or food establishment.
Most of the area models theirs off of ours,
Okay.
actually. They actually have been working with Aaron and Model with Aaron Harwell, our fire inspector, and getting our rules and regs, and their communities have been adopting those. I think specifically the ones that you see that are $100 actually got our rules and regs and took them and applied them to themselves. Could there be something possibly, but then it comes down to who is going to police that.
Well, I'm sure the restaurant owners should be called
But again, it doesn't fall under the jurisdiction of the police department.
if they are,
It falls under the jurisdiction of myself.
if they're illegally parked.
Correct.
So if they're illegally parked, the police can't do anything about that.
If they're under the food truck code, the city administrator is the person that is the authority to make sure that they're compliant. That was the way Mr. Matthews put it.
So if there was, the police were called, they would reach out to you at that point.
That's what they should do, yes.
Okay.
It would make it very challenging to
Is it-
enforce.
I'm wondering if that may be something to look at, the enforcement side of things, because I know, but I would just like to put the thought in the head, as with everyone as well, to, at least as Ricky mentioned about, they can just put up shop right in front of his shop, that's something.
No, I would like to, yeah, not, and I don't think anybody's done that yet, have they,
And so you're
Rick?
saying, just to make sure, so you're saying at any time, so any private event or any public event that wants a permit to host an event would also be excluded from doing that.
Well, that did happen recently in front of Perrysburgers. There was a,
Yes, Perrysburg.
the neighbor to Perrysburgers was having
Yes, and that was a
an event, and they
permitted-
set up right in front of theirs, right?
Yes, and that was a permitted use.
That was permitted.
Yes.
They
If,
weren't selling, were they selling?
yeah, Queso Kitchen, there was a couple other, there was like 2 food trucks there.
It was somebody's grand opening.
There was a grand opening for, I think Ray Ray's or something next, or anniversary or something next door to
Were they,
Perrysburgers, but it blocked, it was right in front of Perrysburgers.
were they selling food to the general public, or was it something they were just giving away?
I think-
That's two different things.
I thought it was I don't know if it was a private event.
Yeah.
May have been,
That's two different things, when you have
I see.
being open to the general public or being open for a private event.
Yeah, and they were permitted, they were on the
Applicable.
street, but,
Yeah, my understanding is they were in violation for that
Okay.
event.
and it hasn't
They
happened.
were, or they were not.
I don't believe they were. I can't remember the specifics because I think that happened over a weekend.
Yeah, it did, just a month or 2 ago. Now, Rick, they have not set up in front of you yet, right?
No, they tried, and, you know, just like they tried setting up on the lawn at the school on Friday nights, and I tell them that I have strict use of that property, you don't have to leave.
Right. Yeah, even the school wouldn't allow them.
No,
Sure.
the school doesn't allow them on the grounds.
Well, I would definitely be supportive of making sure that there's something written, if we want to revisit those rules and make sure that they're not set up in front of a competing restaurant. I mean, put an ice cream truck in front of his store that just would not be right.
No, I'd agree with that.
Yeah.
We can do it.
Yeah.
Can we do that in zoning or somewhere where is that,
Well, I
Came
think
out of
everything,
finance.
that came out of finance, so we can,
yeah, everything has to come out of here on that one.
can we maybe take another look at that and see if that's, maybe just add that language?
That gets you into all this constitution stuff. I mean, we can,
Yeah,
but I agree. If we could say, I think it'd be awful if someone can pull up in front of your business, particularly an ice cream truck. Well, you serve food too.
yeah, our hot dog truck. or
I mean, right,
something.
right now, they can do that, under the
I
rules
know,
you
yeah, I
folks
know.
have now. They can pull up in front of any restaurant, just like you're sitting here talking about Ray Ray's had them there
Right.
in front of Perrysburg. Now, I mean, I don't know whether it was free, or if they were charging, or I am selling to the general public, I have no idea, I wasn't up there. I think you're right, that it was over a weekend, so it's kind of, but,
Yeah.
you know,
Well, I think maybe if our law director could just look at, see if we can put, if we are allowed to add language like that into that.
I can certainly do that, but I do think Mr. McCarthy hit on something that the last law director, I think when we were going through this had come up, and like the whole restricting the time, manner, place kind of business, I think, was discussed a bit, and I don't think it was changed because of that fear that there would be
New law director, new opinion.
repercussions.
Okay. Yeah, I wouldn't mind just getting a new opinion on that. See where we can go. We'll keep fighting the fight, Rick.
well, I've been doing it for 7, 8 years now.
Well, I think we'll try to do what's in our power.
It's like I told you the other day, you know, the other restaurants, we all have to work, and we have things to do too. They get tired of fighting, get tired of banging their head
Yeah.
against the wall, you know, because we really get nowhere.
I assure you, I'll bring it up at a CVB meeting and see if that's something that the CVB would be interested in looking at as well. Okay. All right, we'll move on to the next item, which is the establishment of state and federal grant funds.
Okay,
Amber?
that's me, yes. The next 4 items are based on best practices in accounting and out-of-state bulletin recommendations, kind of just to get things documented. So the first one is grants. We would like to establish 2 grant funds, one for federal and one for state. And actually, after discussion with the law director this week, she felt that we already have sufficient authorization to go ahead and set up those funds through the ORC. And also, there was an ordinance from 2019 that's at your seat. This is a copy that was passed by Perrysburg Council to allow for the grant funds. However, on the books it didn't happen. So she is okay with using both those sources as authorization. And basically, it will just allow us to isolate grant funds to match up the revenues and expenditures. If there's any local shares that are required for the grant, we can transfer that money right in there, and then it's all together. And also, some federal grants are required to actually be in their separate funds. So
I remember Dave introducing this idea to the Finance Committee back in 19. And that made a lot of sense.
Right.
And unencumbered funds as well, I mean, when they're not.
Yeah, anything specifically for a grant.
Okay.
And they do have to come to council for approval to apply for the grant, so you'll be well aware of it all. And Kayla does have a lot of experience with grants, so she's gonna help set everything up and with the tracking and reporting requirements that we have. So 22 going forward, we're gonna be on top of grants.
Now, what, Amber?
Yes.
We have the 2019 resolution.
Yes.
What's going to be different? I mean,
So there's not going to be any action needed. The agenda went out before Kate and I had an opportunity to dig into some of the details, and she did find state code that that might not have even been required back in 19, that we are authorized to set up grant funds without permission. So no legislation or any vote or anything on this, but I just kind of, since it's on the agenda, I wanted to let you know what it's about.
all right.
Okay?
Thank you.
I get it now.
Okay.
And then there's a special revenue fund?
This is a new one, and we do have legislation for this one. The ORC does specifically allow for this to be set up. We would like to call it basically the Payroll and Payout Reserve Fund. It would allow us to accumulate funds for paid time off that's paid out when people retire or leave. And that varies greatly from year to year. So this would help stabilize the budget. Every year we would put a certain amount in there and then pay it out of there instead of some budget years taking the big hit, depending on how many people retire in that budget year. The other thing that would go into there is when there's an extra pay period. We're paid every other week, so typically there's 26 pay periods in a year. Every 11th year, however, there's 27. So the last time this happened was in 2020. There were 27 pay periods in that budget, took a hit of an additional, had to be over $500,000. So by looking at this in advance, the next time would be 2031. And we actually have estimated by that point we would need about $670,000 to cover that one extra pay period. So we would like to divide that out over the next 10 years and set aside 1/10 of it. So when we hit the 2031 budget, we're not taking a big hit just in that 1 year.
Now, that's
So that would-
forethought there.
That would also go into that fund.
Yeah.
How currently we just, every year as we're constructing the budget, we say, okay, police departments can have 5 retirements.
Yes.
So then you
Or
gotta-
they suspect that they have 5 people that are eligible to retire, so the budget, what they think their payouts will be. And if it happens, then the dollars are there. If it doesn't happen, then the dollars don't get expended. But then going back and looking at comparison years over time to see if there's a trend, you have to factor those things out because you're not getting the true cost of what the regular payroll is when you have all those vacation, sick, comp time, cash outs. So like last year was a banner year for the police division
Yeah.
in terms of payouts, as well as finance had a very large payout that was split between two different accounts. And
So
now we
by
look at it
having
and look
this
at it.
fund, you can kind of try and forecast.
Yes.
It looks like we're in a
Right.
need and.
And kind of
Yeah, because
stabilize
then,
it.
what Amber and I can
A
do
little
is every year, we can look at, and this is just, again, just for general fund payroll. Anything that's in their own enterprise fund or special revenue fund would stay there. This would just be for general fund employees, which is mainly police and fire. And we would look at our annual general fund payroll, and we can adjust it each year as we're looking at it going forward. So if next year 1/10 equals X, 2 years later, that 1/10 might equal Y. So it's something that we can track and make sure that when that time comes, we have the right amount of funding in there. We're not looking to overfund it, we're not looking to underfund it, we're looking to come as exact as we can in terms of that 27 payroll. And on the vacation, sick comp, Amber and Kayla can generate reports out of our system that tells us what that liability is at the end of each year. And then we can try and set, a certain amount of that aside over time. We know, like, I think right now, between vacation and sick, the liability that's on the books for the city is over $1 million.
Would that have to go through council every year though?
It would be part of the budget process
Every year?
every year. So we would look to take that 1.1 million between the two different vacation and sick, I don't think comp is here as much, and look and try to divide that out and have a manageable goal to build that up so that we have dollars there going forward. Because those will start being used perhaps even next year. We have some police and fire and service individuals that are eligible to retire. Will they retire? We don't know, but we want to start funding that liability.
Makes sense.
Trying to be prudent.
I remember representing townships on labor stuff, at least years ago, I don't know if it's still true, they all wanted to set up something like this, but state law, they couldn't. Because it really.
I know they let counties do it, and I know they let cities do it, but they must not let counties.
Yeah, because they'd really take a hit in some of these townships. If,
Oh,
they have
right,
those
especially if they have police and fire departments.
Yeah, they did, the ones I'm talking about. They wish they could do something like this. They weren't allowed to.
Well, where did this language come from here? Because I see we have, is this something I see some is crossed out, is this something?
That's the next,
That's the reserve.
That's,
yep,
fund.
that's
all
the
right.
reserve.
That's the reserve.
That's 2 items from now.
All right, gotcha. All right. Well, then we'll, do you need this to pass as an emergency measure?
I would say yes, then that way we can, adjust the amended budget.
To
You know, if we have this set up first, then, yeah, when we, present the amendment, we can go ahead and appropriate out of there.
Gotcha.
Yeah, that would be great.
And we're in favor of this?
Yes.
Yeah, for you, okay.
No objection.
All right, we'll pass that on. So, all right, yeah, you're right. Now the expenditure of funds for public personnel, that's, yeah.
Okay, there's a legislation for this one as well. It's kind of a housekeeping item. Basically, all governmental expenditures have to be for a public purpose. And the auditor of state requires that anytime funds are spent on specific items, that the governing board has to pass legislation basically saying that they're okay with that. Things like coffee, meals, refreshments, are items that are specifically noted to need legislation documented to show that the governing body is okay with this. And we looked through old records looking for legislation, trying to find where this was passed previously, and couldn't find anything. It doesn't mean it doesn't exist. These books are old, and it is a goal to get things like that, to get
Our
scanned.
record keeping is,
Yes.
it's all there, it's just not organized, and then you
Another
Right,
cleanup item
right.
here,
It is definitely on a list that we have to go through and scan things so we can search, and then they will be searchable in PDF, even by specific words. So we'll get there, but we couldn't find this one, so this would be basically to document what the auditor of state requires.
But we've never had it surface on an audit, where they said, you don't have this?
We have, not that I know of.
Okay.
Audits, I feel like they concentrate on specific items every year, and you never know what that's gonna be,
Yeah.
so.
No, I mean, if what you're telling us is we shouldn't be spending money on this stuff, like buying ice cream from a Dewey or John or for a going away party or
Tim,
something.
have you been about ice cream cone?
But we should have had
We should have
something.
had this legislation.
I get it.
And we may have.
We may have at some point in time, because remember, at one point in time, council and the mayor's budget used to share in the cost of, like a Christmas
Yeah.
luncheon or a Christmas dinner for all employees. And that has been like a practice for quite a long time. And kind of switched that over the time I've been here. It's a different, a lunch versus a dinner versus, a get together. So we think that at some point, council had talked about it, was okay with it, but we just can't find any record.
Now we'll have a record of it. So this is also something you'd like to just get going as fast and do an
Yes.
emergency?
Yes.
Okay.
So this
Since
is,
we're heading into audit season, then yes.
Yes, why not get it in?
I don't really have an issue with it. The only question is how often is this utilized?
I mean, on a large scale, this past year, it was only during we had box lunches brought in for all staff at different times for Christmas as a thank you. That's the only time on an annual basis that everybody in the city has enjoyed something like this. And then you talk about different departments may have a coffee pot so that when the troops come in and head out, they grab a coffee in their to-go cup. Okay, so there's things like that. Or we have collective bargaining negotiations going on, and we have high-paid attorneys in the room, and we don't want to break and spend time paying them to just chat with us at a lunch. We bring in lunch and have working lunches. Because you're talking about 3 or 4 people getting a lunch. Like the coffee in coffee makers, we don't really even do that here anymore. So it's not a very frequent item. There could be a time where, say, the mayor is meeting with a constituent and they go to lunch and the mayor picks up the tab. And you can look when you see his credit card receipts, that happens few and far between.
Would his credit card receipts be on this as well?
Yes.
Oh,
We do get those every month.
yeah. I understand that, but I'm saying for the auditor, because that's under the mayor's budget, correct?
Everything is audited, all funds.
I understand everything's audited, but I'm saying, is the mayor paying someone out to lunch combined with the coffee pots?
Yes, yes.
I always thought that was the mayor had his own budget.
But again, under the state auditor's eyes,
It's the same thing.
any purchase of a refreshment, a meal, a beverage,
Okay,
for any purpose, public purpose, has to have legislation passed. So this legislation
perfect.
covers that.
Okay.
I guess the only concern that I have is something like this being abused by,
Well, and it's a good thing you brought that up. Amber is going to be tracking this to make sure that that's not being abused. That's not abused.
is there a way, and I know this is just adding something more, to have something like this reported on either a monthly or quarterly basis of what the expenditures are? I know we get the credit cards and
I would have to defer to Amber because we don't have any.
it could easily be an email, but.
Right, there's no specific, like, expense account set up for food, or, you know what I mean? Like, it basically would go through a miscellaneous account, or, and it's random. Sometimes there'll be a couple of departments getting things, and sometimes there's nothing.
But we do still see them in the credit card receipts, don't we?
That's the.
Yeah.
That's what-
I look at those real close every month, and so they show up there, right?
Yeah, that would be the most likely place for them to show up. Because those, I'll say incidentals, we're not going to.
Usually just go use a card, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's typically the way it would work. Except for I'll say like that Christmas lunch, those were purchased ahead of time. I think we have purchase order
Yeah.
issued for that particular vendor.
But I guess that's really my only concern is something like this being abused. And I just don't want to see that.
Right,
that
or we
happen.
could talk about like a specific amount or something specific that you would want to be notified of, but there's no like.
I almost kind of want to be notified of almost every single one. And the primary is I'm concerned of let's say there's one employee who has access to the car and says, hey, you know what, I'm going to get a free lunch every week, every day of the week. But, 5 days a week because, hey, I'm going to go
Well, the
meet
good
with
thing
them.
is there's very few people that have a city credit card.
Okay, well,
And every employee that uses one has a supervisor at them or authorizing these credit cards, correct?
Yes.
And then, and the mayor's, we
So
see
going
his,
forward, this is
very
something
minimal.
Amber and I have talked about, is to be more mindful, because she didn't see these things come through before. That was handled by the last finance director, so now they're rolling across her desk. So now she can track that, but we don't have any past knowledge of what was crossing Dave Press's desk. If Dave did not bring that to my attention, and if they get any sort of concern. So we don't know that there is a concern. We just know that now Amber is aware that these purchases are made. She did a little digging, found out that we couldn't find the document that the state auditor wants us to have, and that's why we're here today.
okay. I just would, if we're starting to see something where it's excessive on a card for one
Well, she's going to
person.
come to me, and then we'll make sure that that never happens.
Yeah, okay. The other, since we're talking about the credit cards, I know I brought this up to you in the past, and I don't know if anybody up here knows the answer to this. I know how many of us probably all have credit cards, we all get points, we all get cash back, things of that nature. Is that something that you can do in the?
We do not get any rewards for the credit cards that we have.
Okay. Is that
And it's all
something
under
that,
one account, one master.
It's all through the Bank of America, and I can look and see how it was set up originally, but I have not seen any.
is that something that we can get out of curiosity?
I can look at that. I know with the new system, the new software, one of the things I do want to look at is paying things online, paying things with ACH. And one of the other options is paying things with credit cards. Some of our big invoices, if we pay them and then get some of those points, then it goes back into the general fund. It's not happening right now, but absolutely something, when we have better processes in the software to support that I would like to look at other options for making large payments and receiving the benefits of possible credit card points.
Okay. That's just something I
Yep,
think would be good to look at, just to see what we can.
definitely on the list.
And our balances are paid every month, I take it.
Absolutely.
We're never paying
Yes.
any interest on credit card. are we?
No,
They're not making anything on us, are they?
no way.
Good to know. All right.
Consider it an American Express.
Yeah, right.
Do they even have that anymore?
I don't know.
What, American Express card or?
They have American Express, but do they have the ones where you have to pay it off? I don't know if they.
I don't know, I pay them off anyways.
I understand that, but I don't know if, American Express, like Bridget said, used to have to pay every month. Then they came out with new American Express where it's just like.
They probably realize all the money they're
I think
leaving on
they
the
did away
table.
with those every month.
More profitable.
Okay, so we do still need an approval if we can move this forward.
Sounds good.
I'm comfortable.
All righty, sounds great. Now this one is, I need to
Yes.
explain to me, Amber, thank
Mr.
you.
Weber, this is your policy.
All righty.
Okay, back in 2012, council passed a general fund reserve fund policy. It created the actual fund, and that allows us to put up to 5% every year of general fund revenue into that reserve fund. It also laid out that the target balance of the fund was 15% of the prior year's expenses. So we looked at this, looked at recommendations, looked at best practices, other municipalities, and they're all over the board. Some do 15% like we currently have, some do 20, 25, 16.7, which I think is 2 months.
So we had 6 months.
Right, they were all over the board. I would prefer, in speaking with Bridget, that we would change the policy to be 3 months of the prior year expenses. That gives you 1 quarter. That's a basic accounting, trend. You look at things quarterly. So this would allow us to have enough funds in there on hand. If something would happen, we could get through the quarter, as opposed to Right now it's at 15%. So it's basically changing the wording and allowing a little more to go into there.
So the average 3 months of the prior.
Of the prior year.
Okay. Yeah, that,
What's
and-
the 15 months translated, or 15% translated to in terms of months?
15%.
Would that be about 2 months, or?
It was, I think, a little. It
Like
wasn't-
2.5,
Yeah, it
I
wasn't
want to
quite
say.
3 months.
It was a weird,
Okay.
when you look at it from that side, it wasn't exactly a certain amount of months.
I was just curious. I
Yeah.
couldn't do the math
I want
that
to say
quickly.
about 2.5.
So the cap would be 3 months.
Correct. Yeah.
so this is a policy that we already have.
Yes, and
So
all.
we're just, we're looking to just change some of this language in
Yep,
it.
and the only thing is changing from the 15% to the 3
3
months
months, all right.
as more of a standard.
And do we need legislation to do that?
We do.
I think so, then that policy.
To amend?
Yes.
Okay, all right.
And I don't know that that needs to be an emergency.
I don't think.
I
it
don't,
needs to be.
yeah, I don't think that one would need to be.
Okay.
So I'm trying to remember when we had the conversation on the water rate study, we had that group that came in. For some reason, I recall them recommending a 6 month.
In the utilities account, I think they were recommending 6 months. This is just for the general fund.
I understand, and the only reason I mention that is just for the sake of consistency.
Okay.
I don't know what everyone else in council's thoughts are, but if we have different departments having different recommended balances, is that something that could be convoluted over time?
My only concern would be 6 months of general fund expenditures.
It's a lot.
Is
Yeah,
a lot.
I
Yeah,
understand.
okay,
It's very different than utilities.
utilities, yeah.
And so I know that the 6 months, I think was it for just the operations?
They wanted 6 months worth of operations, not capital.
Yeah.
expenditures.
So I'm wondering, because 6 months of general fund, 3 months, I'm thinking out loud here, so I apologize.
And
But
it's
that's not for the
certainly-
record.
It's certainly something that we can keep visiting as we gather more information and as our budget grows, quite frankly.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Because I don't disagree with 3 months for general fund, I don't disagree. My biggest concern is consistency at this point.
Yes.
Making sure that we have some sort of consistent operation across all boards. So would it be better to have 6 months for operational costs versus general fund, or would it be?
I know that the mayor was, we suggested the 3-month, we were talking about the change in the language. And he was like, well, I wouldn't be opposed to 4. We wouldn't necessarily be opposed to 4 either. But we also have to have the funds to fund that 6 months or the 4 months. And right now, we're just shy of 3 months. So I don't know that we have the extra wherewithal financially to put in there to get up to that number.
Yeah.
It would take several years. It doesn't mean that we can't change this over time, though. I came from a jurisdiction where we had different fund balance requirements for the different funds. Our sewer and water funds had a different balance than the capital fund and the general fund reserve, than some of the other special revenue accounts that we had also. So, I mean, consistency is a matter of us making sure we're following whatever the policy is. It doesn't need to be an exact number for all of it, because that number is going to vary greatly. I mean, what the actual dollar amount is. You know, on our side of things, on the expenditure side, what is the general fund proposed expenditures? 20 million?
25.
So,
And the 15% hasn't been a problem. We just want to make it 3 months to clean
right,
it.
the 3 months is more meaningful to us. We know what that means.
Right.
15% of revenue
Okay, so we can,
kind of arbitrary.
that's not a problem.
And then if we get over the 3 months, we could always take the funds and utilize that in other areas of the city if we want.
And we can come back and say, you know what, we've grown enough where we think we should have 4, 5, 6 months worth of operating funds
Okay.
for stabilization. You know, it's the saying, what is the right number? You can ask 10 different people and they'll all give you a different number.
Well, it depends on the risk tolerance.
You know, like the city of Columbus, I think their goal is having $90 million in their general fund reserve. Now, their general fund budget is probably 10 times as much as ours. Ours is probably more than that. So it's meaningful to them. It sounds outrageous to us because of our size. I'd like to have that. Love to have.
well, then, in your.
I think that I'm okay with that. I just
Leave it
wanted
for
to-
3 months, we can revisit this in a year and see if we need to go 4 or
But
more.
I'm comfortable with making that change.
Okay. Yes, seems like it's clean change for you, for accounting and everything, so that's fine on that. Number 7, we're gonna updating the code language to be gender neutral. Isn't this something that we kinda talked about in personnel?
Yeah, it came out in personnel, and we were thinking instead of waiting for personnel, because of, you were on personnel, Councilman Weber. We know that council, when that came out in the report, nobody was opposed to it, it makes sense. So we figured since all the codified ordinances, but when they do get changed, we bring all that legislation back to finance anyways for you guys to bless it. For the codifier, that we would just bring this right to finance, have you folks bless it with council and send it off to,
Walter Drink.
Walter.
Yeah, I remember that, and we something we're reviewing referred to the law director as him, and I asked Kate, would you like that to say his or her, or he or she? And then she said, we're just gonna make it they, right?
We just say it.
My grammar teacher from.
Is that,
would shudder at incorrect grammar, but
Yeah. What do you need from us then, as a committee here?
There is an ordinance.
There's an ordinance for this then?
Yes.
Just a recommendation to be able to move this to council.
All right.
I'm good.
Okay, yes, absolutely. That's a great move. Okay, I don't understand this number 8, transferring deeds to cemetery. I'll have to explain that. Maybe someone on the cemetery board can talk about that. All right.
I can definitely fill in on this because this is something that we've been talking about for a while. So if you don't mind.
That'd be great.
So back, what was it, 05-ish? Around 02, even further than that. I was still a junior in high school. The cemetery had purchased the property alongside it. However, based off some, because they had to get a loan from the township on there, it had to be in the city's name. The loan has since been paid off and needs to be transferred over back into the cemetery's name. So the cemetery has control over that piece of land because it's still in the city's name. So essentially, this is just more of a housekeeping item to put it back into the cemetery's name now that that note has been officially paid off.
Is that the property west of the new section?
Yes,
Okay,
just south of the church.
yes.
Yeah, the loan originally was taken out when the financial institution who required the city to step up and be the lien holder. And then in order
The largest
to finance that, or no, it was either called or it was going to be financed, and the township stepped in and said they could give like a better rate. And so then the township assumed the balance of that loan. But as Jonathan said, it's been paid off many years ago.
Got paid off, I want to say about 4 years ago, possibly 3 or 4 years ago. And we talked about it back then and never actually made the effort to go that next step. But I think we had a lot of conversation to figure out where the deed was.
And then I think at the last joint cemetery board meeting, Mr. McCarthy made the motion to get that.
Yeah,
yeah, I mean, that should have been transferred a while ago.
yeah. We had the conversations on it, and I think COVID hit, and then we all kind of lost our way on that.
So we found our way.
Yes.
Well, we'll get this taken care of. And there's an ordinance for this? Yep.
Yes, there is.
Still right there.
Oh, there it is.
I tell you, Linda at the cemetery. is
My
gonna be happy
gosh.
to get
Yeah,
this.
she was. I think she retired.
I'm gonna lose my voice
We'll
introducing all these
Yeah, yeah.
ordinances.
Sorry.
All righty, so we're all in agreement on that, to make that move forward, all righty. Well, now it's up to Mr. Bronder. Good, welcome back after a few months.
Yes, thanks for having me back.
Yes.
Does anybody need a copy of the report?
Did I print one? Let's see.
It comes on sideways.
For sake of brevity, I'm gonna skip page 1, which is just the monthly report, and we'll.
Did you have an extra one you can pass down here? That didn't print out for me. Thank you.
And we'll just flip to the second page where we've got our year-to-date information. So, obviously, we concluded the year 2021, and we ended up at $21.8 million in income tax collections for the year. And as you know, in prior meetings, I've been kind of reporting not only how we are compared to the 2020 year, but also 2019, the pre-pandemic pandemic.
Yes.
And so compared with 2020, we were up 9.4% for the year. But as you know, 2020 was a down year because of the pandemic, and so I've been comparing this information to 2019 as well. And I'm pleased actually to report that our 2021 revenues were actually 4% up over the 2019.
More 2019 before anything hit, huh?
As well, exactly. So had a good year, positive year in terms of the income tax collections for 2021. We were up across the board in terms of all three of the account types, whether it was individual, net profit, and/or withholdings. So we saw increases across the board. And that was true not only compared with 2020, but also 2019 as well, so.
My quarterly taxes and they're still going up a little bit.
Thank you, Councilman. Appreciate that. And I know that we are, I believe, forecasting or budgeting for 2022 an amount of 21 million, which is, again, below where we ended up the year for 2021. So even though things look pretty rosy right now, we do still have some concerns with what we're going to potentially be experiencing with 2022. Some of those things we've talked about previously with the individual non-residents who are working from home, but yet their employer was still withholding for that principal place of work. In 2020, those individuals were not eligible for a refund of those withholdings. 2021 state law does allow them to request a refund of that. So we are expecting that we're going to see some increased activity there on the non-resident refund requests. The other thing, because of this work from home situation now becoming much more prevalent, is that we are already starting to see some of our corporate employer groups having some shifts in their withholdings as well. So we've seen some decreases already for some of our corporate employers in the city. Their withholdings are starting to drop. We're seeing some decreases. And so I have a feeling that trend is just going to continue into 2022, just because they're, they're allowing a lot of their employees now to work from home, as a virtual employee, and not necessarily maybe even maintaining office space within the city anymore. So, but that's kind of a big unknown at this point. I don't have any way of really quantifying what kind of impact that might have. So, but like I said, we're already starting to see that trend in some of the withholdings.
Won't that work a lot in both ways though? If there's corporations in Toledo that folks live in Perrysburg and work at,
Yeah.
or ones that don't have to travel to Detroit anymore or things like
Right,
that. So-
right, yeah, potentially, yes, we could see some.
So I'm hoping
Net
that'll
effect.
balance out. Whereas our OI employees that are living outside of town.
It's actually a good question, because I know that with the W-2s, if it showed that they had withholding, and like, for instance, I work in Toledo. With the withholding from Toledo, you still pay 3/4 in Perrysburg. If they refund that, does that show up on the W-2s?
It won't necessarily show up on the W-2.
Report that.
So one of two things will probably happen. Number one is the taxpayer will self-report that. But number two would be is that our regional group in Northwest Ohio, we've been discussing this now for the past several months, and the need for the communication within tax jurisdictions, which is allowed by state code. So if we have an OI employee who's requesting a refund of their Perrysburg city tax and they're a resident of Sylvania, we notify Sylvania that John Smith got not Jonathan, John Doe.
I was gonna say, all right.
John Doe
I would report if anything.
got his refund of his Perrysburg city tax, so that Sylvania will know if they are if the taxpayer themselves is not adjusting their withholding credits, they can go in and amend the return and correct that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's been one of the key topics that we've been discussing amongst the regional jurisdictions there.
Okay. Thank you, Steve.
All right, you're welcome, thank you.
And if you don't mind, I'm going to excuse myself.
Yes,
at this
please.
point, Just, I do have a meeting that I need.
No problem, yeah. You're going to miss the dinner that's being brought in.
Okay, you can have my dessert.
Well, now we know that we can,
Now that it's legal.
that's right.
Right, yeah, we just passed this out.
Maybe live in March, you know?
Okay. All from a food truck, yeah. Thanks for sticking around, Rick. All right. Our finance director's report. Amber, you're back in the spotlight here, okay?
Next, we have the list of expenditures from December that are over $5,000. If anyone has any questions on those, I'll try to answer.
I've gotten really good at going through here now, and I've asked about everything over the, now I recognize what it is, so
Right.
believe it or not, I don't have any questions this month. And I did also look, we talked about credit cards, I went through all those, and I don't have any questions on any of those, so. Do you, either one of you have questions on the 5,000 or over?
Just a question I ask every month. What's Fire Station 38? The one across the street?
The one across the street.
38, 39's out there, yeah.
39 is headquarters.
I always kind of wonder, why, whatever happened to Fire Station 1 through 37?
I got that answer.
You'll have to ask Jeff Klein.
No.
Yeah, that's,
I've asked him before, he told him before, and
it's county, it goes by county.
Oh, that's right,
It's
yeah.
like firefighter math, it never makes sense.
Right, yes, right. It's a county thing, I guess, how many, when it was built in the county. So, well, great. That keeps us moving down, if you don't have anything on that, and health insurance funding?
The health insurance fund is up a little bit more every month, like I've been reporting. We ended the year with $275,805 in that fund. So that's a good trend.
Even after you paid out $164,000, right? In December.
Correct. That was just the claims, and then
That was a claim, then that 50,000 was another claim?
for the admin fees to UHC. Yeah.
I see. And that is looking good, that we still have that much after that. That was one of the large claims you were probably speaking of earlier in the year, isn't it? Or is that just a lot of claims at once?
It's a lot added up, and
Yeah.
actually there's more coming.
You still think
I
there
always
is?
say that, but-
You know that, huh?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, well, we'll enjoy it while we have it
Yeah.
then. Okay. Got that. Other business, you have a new item for
I
us.
do. Back in December, the police department received $363,000 for equitable sharing funds from the federal government. It was due to us being involved in investigations. It was forfeiture money. And so obviously we had already passed the budget when we received these funds, so they were not included at that time. And the police chief would like to push this forward and not wait till to add it to the amended budget. He does have some items, I know, I think a couple are vehicles that he's looking at purchasing. He's going to take that to safety committee yet this month, but wanted to be proactive and ask for the funds to be appropriated so we could get things ordered with the supply chain issues and the long waits for vehicles. I know that was one of his motivators as to get this appropriation approved. Like I said, he still will take the specific items that are over 25,000 to safety committee, but wanted to get the financial blessing on the appropriation of the funds.
Yeah, as it does, it says it can only be used for law enforcement.
Yes, they're very specific. I printed out the guidance today, Kayla and I both looked at it, and it's like 30 pages of detail, so very specific.
You think 50,000 is enough for the training? You want?
For what he has planned right now, yes.
Okay.
The big thing that he's looking at, as Amber mentioned, is he's looking at a couple of unmarked police package Ford Edges that we currently have, and replacing a 1990-something Crown Vic, I think, for.
Oh, gosh. Still have a Crown Vic?
It's some really old Crown Vic.
Are we going to give it to the planning and zoning department?
No, absolutely not.
You could be the MO.
And also, I think it's like a old Ford Contour.
Okay.
But right now, with the police interceptor packages, the cutoff is getting sooner and sooner. So he wants to get these two taken through safety and get on the order, get on the books to be ordered. And then he has some other equipment items that he is looking at. Fortunately or unfortunately, he can't supplant anything that's been budgeted in the general fund. So you may recall during the general fund budget process, he does have a typical replacement of work vehicles. But since those have already been approved in the budget, we can't go back and undo that and use these funds. But the good thing is these funds never expire. They always stay with us, and so we always have them available to us. So,
Oh, that's excellent.
Question you may be able to answer more than up here. Since we are talking about new vehicles, has the chief or you been looking at these hybrids?
the current vehicles that we have been purchasing for police are hybrids, hybrid Fords.
For the last few years, we've been getting hybrids, and we've gone from the Tahoes to the Ford Explorers. Yeah, and there they go. Our interceptors are,
And the Interceptor is like the police package, but it's an Edge, or I think it's Ford.
oh, it's an Edge? They're Explorers,
Private Explorers, okay.
yeah.
You know, back in the day, Explorer used to be very large. So maybe
Yeah. Okay, and you need our approval to pass that
As an emergency.
as an emergency, and that's fine.
I'm okay with it.
Okay,
Yep, sounds good.
that's another one. Also another business, I have a question I'm waiting to ask. Bridget, our Wednesdays at Woodlands, the music that I thought was being paid for out of CVB, but the city takes care of that Wednesday afternoon that Robin Ballmer runs on June and July. I would really like to see it move and add August to that. That was,
There
It
is a proposal that will be going before the mayor for the amended budget that would contain funding for the month of August.
great, we can, all right, add August to that, because
So
it's
we
very
have-
popular, it's
we have
got,
to get his blessing to move that forward to council as part of the amended budget process.
wonderful, wonderful. I was, so I don't even have to sell it, like I was all prepared to tell you how popular it's really become, and
Oh,
it's a great community event.
So you have to sell it to the rec committee, because the rec committee's gonna review it, so.
Okay,
I'll talk with the chair.
oh, thank you. And, and even though our friend Charlie goes there and cooks hot dogs, it's no competition to you, and no food trucks are
Well,
there.
that's like, you're on CVB, I think you should spend music in September.
Yeah. Oh, maybe,
Sometimes it's nicer in September than it is in August.
in August, you don't wanna sit out there for 2
I
hours.
know, yeah.
Yeah. Any other business to come before the committee?
No, sir.
Thanks, everyone. This was a nice, longest finance committee I've ever been
Yeah.
to.
Thank you very much. This is not normally like this.
Yeah.
Fortunately,
On a welcome